Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to TNT Matter of Fact. I am Dr. Ebony Thompson.
And I am Dr. James Thompson.
And if you are tuning in for straight talk from real world views, you are at the right spot. So today's episode, we're going to talk about the power of perseverance. And I'm going to start with you, Dr. Thompson. Can you tell me exactly what that means to you, how that resonates with you?
So when you think about having to persevere through something, it's normally having to overcome an obstacle or obstacles, in your path or along the way to achieve whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. And so the power of perseverance is a real thing. So
The way it resonates with me, I guess more recently, is because I've been going through a lot of transition, starting a lot of things new. Some of you who follow us might know that I'm about to open up a daycare center or a child development center, because it is much more than daycare, and that's another story for another time. However, just going through the process of that and all of the challenges that I faced, I had to persevere. Even yesterday, with the heavy rain, I had to go do something and I almost wanted to give up. I almost wanted to stop and say, I'm not going to do this today. I had to press through. And it just reminded me of the difference between success and failure amongst some of our counterparts.
mm-hmm.
You know, the difference between success and failure for many, many people is perseverance. The ability to push through when things are tough, the ability to go through and push through when things are uncomfortable, the ability to push through when we don't feel like we're making the headway that we need to make and our dream might not be realized. And so just recently, perseverance has just been so heavy on me because of the pressures of the different things. And I feel a weight, a mantle on me to complete this goal, to get this task completed so that I can be a servant of that community, so that I can develop those students or those children in their most formative years.
Mm-hmm. And so in what we do, not just what we do, but where we're from, perseverance is probably the biggest of attributes that you want our youth to have. And I say that because the obstacles that you face on a daily basis, the things that you have to overcome, the things you have to persevere through are ultimately at the end what makes the difference. And so a lot of our students have obstacles with what they deal with at home. They have to persevere through it. Getting to school every day, not just getting to school, but how they get to school. And by how they get to school, I don't mean, getting on a bus. I mean, having to wait for mom to come home from the night shift, or having to drop brother and sister off at two different schools before they go. Having to, take care of their mom or grandmom who may be sick or elderly before they go. And so all of these things are obstacles that our kids have to persevere through. And so when I think about what a lot of our students are able to achieve, what a lot of our kids are able to overcome, they're not just able to go to school and be students. They're not able to just wake up in the morning and, think about how ready they are for that math test that they have today. There's so much that they have to get through before they get to that point. And so, as a not just a school leader, but as an educator, serving that population, it's always something that I have to consider. I have to consider how they're going to persevere through whatever comes after this, because, we give a whole lot of support. We try to make sure that they're able to persevere. I'm known for popping up at kids' houses when they stop coming to school, or don't show up for testing, or aren't doing what they're supposed to do. I have no problem with pulling up on, their house. And, initially it starts off as a funny shock thing, but then we get down to the real conversation. And every single time that I've done that, they come back and they persevere through. And so, this whole idea of perseverance and, what it means a lot of times to adults, the obstacles that we have to overcome. It's almost like a second nature when you're from where we're from.
Yeah. When you talk about the kind of students that we impact, I can't help but think about the kind of educator it takes to be there for that student, to be that student's champion. And I can remember, being at a school and understanding that the students were in an alternative program already. And so many of them, for them, this was like last chance university, or, possibly their second chance to recoup their education and graduate with their cohort, or as close to their cohort as possible, in terms of their graduation year. And just what kind of educators I was responsible for, and some of the things, even before I was responsible for coaching them or professionally developing them, just working alongside of them, some of the lack of understanding that a lot of them had for those students. And many people think that a student is, especially students in urban areas, when you're not from there, you don't understand the dynamic. You think that you're getting this cookie cutter, ready to learn type of student coming in with their hands folded, notebook, pencil, and everything that they need to be ready. Yet these students may have not eaten dinner last night, or, may have not made it to breakfast because they were late because they were caring for mom or grandmom, or taking their siblings to school, and very much want to be responsible for themselves. But they're often propelled into an early adulthood because responsibilities are placed upon them from their parents, or parent might be absent, and I'm taking on this responsibility because if I don't, my younger siblings are not going to get what they need. And that's the priority. And so I can remember I had a student, and I had him first period, and he came to school and he was always late. He always came like 30, 40 minutes into school. And so rather than, kind of being annoyed with him, I had a conversation with him, and I'm like, you need this class to graduate because it was a requirement. And, what are you going to do? Why can't you get here on time? And he said, Miss, at the time I didn't have a doctorate. He said, Miss, I work at night. I work at Burger King. He said, and I work the night shift. And so, I get off, I guess they close at 12 or 1 or something like that. And he's like, by the time we clean up, by the time I get home, it's like 2, 3 in the morning. I take my shower, I go to bed, and I'm tired. And this is his reality. So, me, and understanding our students and coming from a specific, a similar situation or similar dynamic as them, even I said, well, can't you change your hours, or can't you just work on the weekends? And he said to me, if I do that, how am I going to help my mom pay the rent? He was the other provider in the house. And so automatically I'm like, say no more. This is what you're going to do. When you get here as early as you can. I understand. We're going to have an understanding. I'm going to give you what you need. As long as you can give me what I need by the end of the week, you're good with me. And, and we worked it out, and he respected, me respecting his situation. But we often deal with educators who don't have that kind of empathy, who don't have that kind of compassion, because they don't have that kind of experience. They don't have that kind of understanding. And coming from a background of trauma, I can remember as an elementary school student going to school not ready to learn, going to school hurting because of things that were happening at home that I didn't even understand. And so immediately my experience kicked in and said, I got to help this child, because at the young age, I can't say no one helped me, because there were people who intervened in things that happened. But I had a different kind of compassion because I saw myself. And I'll always often say this, I saw myself in his situation. That could easily have been me, being raised by a single parent. So, him having the resilience to keep coming to school, because that can't feel good, to know that you're the other provider, but this is also my priority.
Yeah. And so I think you kind of hit on something. And so I want to rewind a little bit. When we talk about perseverance, there's levels to perseverance. Everybody goes through things, and people get through things. That's part of life. As part of being human. You face obstacles in life. It could be a deadline at work. It could be traffic. A lot of different things that you persevere through, right? But I think that what we're talking about in the way of perseverance is those major life obstacles, those things that could make or break you, that a lot of times our kids have to persevere through. And when I think about having to persevere through something, really persevere through something, I have to say that I've had a fairly easy life, right? Up until pretty recently. I didn't know what it meant to have to kind of fight through those types of battles of, not wanting to get out the bed, losing my older brother, the person that, outside of my parents, only person that was able to just, check me in a conversation. If I wasn't saying something that made sense, or I wasn't saying something that was right, he would stop me and set me on the right path, and not in a crazy or disrespectful kind of way, but almost like, like, well, did you consider this? Or, like, what about this? If I was struggling a little bit with having to, go to school and go to work and, kind of navigating all of that, he would like, well, how long is that going to last? How long do you think you're going to be in this? And he helped me, kind of work through those things. So I lost my older brother. Then, not too long after that, I lost my mother. And then, less than a year after that, I lost my father. And so, for me, that was the first time I had to really persevere through something that wasn't, for me, something that I could see the light at the end of the tunnel for. This is something that I have to live with forever, day in and day out, no matter what. That's not changing. Like, they're never coming back. And so, understanding that there's levels to this perseverance. If I missed dinner last night because I came home from practice tired and had to go to school hungry one day, right? I persevered through that day. I made sure I made it through. I went to all my classes, whatever. But there are some kids who every single day, they know that they better get to school on time for breakfast.
Yep.
And they better make sure they get their lunch and eat as much of it as they can, because that's the last meal they're going to see until the following day. And on the weekends, they may not see another real meal until
Monday morning.
They come back on Monday morning. And so, like, those weren't things that I had to experience. That was not the level of struggle or strife that I had to persevere through in my life. And so, when we talk about having to persevere through something, I want to make it clear that we're really referring to students who overcome some astronomical things to be able to be where they are and who they are.
Absolutely. And another reference from, my work experience is, like I said, we have, people who come into urban areas to teach, and, and some of them get it. Mm-hmm. Some of them get it and some of them don't. Mm-hmm. Some of them look like our kids and some of them don't. Mm-hmm. And even from both sides of the fence, some of them get it, some of them don't. However, when I became a coach, I heard a teacher say something very snarky about one of our students who I knew was a parent, who was going through a lot of challenges, who had just, got an apartment and was living on her own. So this student is now parenting, going to school full time, and working to sustain housing for her and her child. And I heard it and I didn't address it right away. And it wasn't the only person that I heard say certain things about students and their situations. And the comment made was something to the effect of, if you were here yesterday. And if that student, what I know about that student, and the relationship that I had with that student, if that student could have been there yesterday, they would have. They would have. And so I did a professional development, and I love Google World for this. I went into our SIS, which is our student information system, and I looked up a few of our students' addresses. and I typed them into Google World, and Google World gave me the street view of their house. And so I was able to pull those images and put them in a PowerPoint. And I did a professional development on equity. And we know equity doesn't always mean equal. And so the program that we worked in at the time was developed to create some type of level of equity for students who were facing difficulties or challenges with going to school or coming back to school. Mm-hmm. And I picked somebody from every single person on the professional development class. And at the time we were Zooming because this was COVID time. Mm-hmm. And I went to the slide and I started calling teachers out. You know, Mr. So-and-so, this is your student's house. This is where your student lives. Would you live here? Mm-hmm. Without naming the student. Mm-hmm. And, you know, the faces and the things that, you know, the looks on the faces were, some of them were humbled. Some of them were shamed because it was like dilapidated houses. Some of them with boarded up windows, some of them with doors that looked like they were barely on hinges, because I was able to get a close up view. And this is the walk that students are taking every day. These students, and at this time, students were in the homes. You know, students were in their houses. So, and the reason why I knew that he made that comment was because it was before we went into the lockdown. And so students were home. Mm-hmm. And it's like, would you imagine what they look like, what their situation, if that's what the outside looks like. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that it has to look like that on the inside. I'm not saying that, because you could have a house could look one way on the outside, but the inside be clean and presentable as best as it can be kept with the means that you have. However, that's not a situation. That's not a lot of situation for a lot of our kids. And so, like I said, you know, I was showing them. And then when we got back in the building, I remember somebody, you know, having, and you might have been a part of this initiative, when teachers walked around to pass out flyers and stuff like that, walking around the neighborhood, seeing where your students go to school. Mm-hmm. I mean, where they live and what they navigate coming to school. Because it's not all a bed of roses. Mm-hmm. They all don't get bused. Some of them have to walk through very sketchy areas and situations. And some of them who do catch buses have to get up early before the sun comes up. And so they're navigating these, you know, these areas that are not necessarily safe at this time. That is perseverance. That in itself, especially when you have a choice, because every year that I was in the classroom, I asked my kids, do you come to school every day because you want to or because you have to? And before you answer, I would say to them, because you want to means that if you lay in the bed, nobody's going to say anything. Nobody's going to check you. You can lay in the bed all day. The day will go by and no one will say anything about the fact that you didn't come to school. And what I mean by you have to is you don't have to go to school, but you got to get up out of here. You have one of those parents. Yeah. And so the hands that would go up, and sometimes it would be like 50-50, 60-40, but it was a lot of hands on the, I'm here because I choose to be, because I want to be, because nobody's waking me up. Mm-hmm. And so when you know that, when you have those situations, that's perseverance right there. Mm-hmm. Knowing that if I don't get out this bed, nobody's going to care. Mm-hmm. Nobody's going to care. I'm going to be laying here till 3:00.
And that's really why, as I've navigated being able to be a school leader, I've always made sure that the opportunities and the programming and options that I provided to students were opportunities for them to have a pathway to persevering. You know, if they needed childcare, we put a childcare center in place to make sure that without that opportunity, that resource, they weren't going to have an obstacle that would stop them from being able to persevere. You know, they were able to finish their education. Dealing with a population where a lot of students struggle with performance as it pertains to what the state says a student should be able to do. We put career and technical education programs in place they gave students opportunities to excel in areas that, may not have been available to them in different situations. And so, knowing that I have the ability to provide these types of supports for me is what, being a true leader is all about, understanding the demographic that you serve and providing real options and opportunities for them to be able to be successful, for them to have a real pathway to persevere through whatever it is that they're experiencing. If there's issues with, them getting to school in the morning, how can we support with transportation, whether it be, bus tickets or, for that severe case, maybe adjusting their schedule so that they're not missing English first period. For the times when I was working with K-8 students, having programs first thing in the morning. A couple of times when I first got to my first experience as a K-8 principal, I would be walking up to the building. I would get to work before 7:00. And I'm walking up to the building and there's students standing out front. Waiting. And their parents said, stand close to the building because they didn't have another option. And so we made sure that we put a morning program in place, an after school program in place, becoming that space that allowed students to be able to know that they were somewhere where they could be safe, they could be secure. The parents had that same knowledge as well. And, it put the students in a situation where they could persevere through whatever they were experiencing throughout the day, took that fear of being out there by themselves first thing in the morning. And it just changed, what they were experiencing or what they were going through, giving them that option or that opportunity. And so, I feel like my job is to create those types of situations whenever I can. It's not always possible and it's not also always easy, but when we can, we have to do whatever we can to make those opportunities available.
I completely agree. As an educator, as a leader, I always say that it's our responsibility to be for our students everything that they need, within our limit, within what we can do, within what we can cover. And I do think that in a lot of situations, there can be more done. There can be more done because at the end of the day, when you start talking about, the achievement gap and all of these things, like you got to address the socioeconomic gap. And a lot of these pieces fall into line with that. Like when you say a student is being dropped off at the building at 7:00 and who knows, that parent may have adjusted their schedule because if I'm dropping you off that early, I may have to actually be to work at 7. But I've adjusted my schedule because that's the earliest that I'm comfortable leaving my child. And so, I just sometimes feel like there's no more community in a school community. Like it's just school. It's just, test scores and, what we need to do within the walls of the building. We don't even think about the things that are happening outside of the building that impact the little people. And whether they're high school or anything, I still call them little people, the little people that we are responsible for developing and nurturing every day. And because we don't think of those things, because we don't think of those things, a lot of times we can't get to the root cause and issues compile over time and time. And then the student situation mentally, socially, and emotionally worsen.
And I was going to say, and I'm glad you got that last piece out because it actually goes directly in alignment with that. It's so easy to judge somebody that's in that situation, talk poorly about somebody who has no other choice but to drop their kid off.
That's right.
It's easy to do that, to just let it flow out and say those things when you're not faced with the same obstacles, when you don't have the same barriers, when you do come from a place where both the parents are there, when you do come from a place where resources are more abundant and you can take your kid to a morning program, or you can take your kid, you have the support of family and you can drop them off with a family member. Until you know what these people are experiencing, what they're going through, what they have to overcome, I'm glad that they're bringing their child to school, because even if they're in a situation where it's not ideal for, 30 or 45 minutes in the morning, you know that they're safe for the rest of the day.
Yeah.
Where would you prefer that parent leaves their kid at home by themselves? Would you prefer that they don't come to school at all and don't get their education, don't get to have a good meal, or are cooking their own meal and creating additional unsafe situations? And so, when we think about or talk about, what some of these families have to go through and what they have to do to make it through, it's easy to talk badly about them. As a matter of fact, society tends to, kind of look down on them. But the reality is, those are the ones who are figuring out every single day how to persevere.
Yep.
And if we don't provide whatever support we can provide, then we're leaving this void that the students have to figure out how to fill, because now the kids hear us and what we say. They see our faces. They see our responses. If you're not welcoming them with a smile and making them feel good, it's not for them to have to deal with why their parent had to drop them off. Right. It's not their responsibility. Right. And so we have to figure out how to always be supportive, always be present, and create that situation where the student's going to be able to persevere. And sometimes making sure that that family is able to persevere helps that student persevere.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And like you said, when we don't, our responsibility is to welcome them, to just be glad that you're here. Mm-hmm. Like you're lying, I'm just happy to be here. We're just happy that you're here. We're happy that you persevered and that you got here, because we don't know what out there looks like.
That's right.
And when I've seen teachers be nasty to students, students who, like you said, have no control over their commute, have no control over how I get here, what time I get here. None, no compassion, no empathy, but you look at them like an inconvenience. And then you expect them to perform. And then you're angry again or annoyed again because they're not performing, but you just completely turned them off. And another leader said to me, and this will never leave me because it taught me who not to be. I can deal with a teacher who's toxic if they're a good teacher. Let me pause you right there. If they're toxic, they're not a good teacher. Because I don't care about how much content you know. I don't care about your pedagogy. I don't care about any of that. If you can't sow into and nurture these students socially and emotionally, because now what are you doing? I'm good at English as a student, but I'm toxic because that's what my teacher taught me. So now I'm great at English, but I'm not a good person. I'm great at English, but I'm biting people's backs, because that's what I saw. And that's the example that you put in front of me. And you accepted that because they were a good teacher.
And that's what for them success looks like, because that's their teacher.
Yep.
And so that's the metric. Is this what I should do, or who I should be to be successful? There's nothing more valuable than teaching our kids to be good people.
Absolutely.
And it's not always hard when you come from a world where you see that people don't treat us good. And so we're asking them to do something, like a lot of the things that we see with, the unequitable treatment of law enforcement on our students or people of color in general, makes it hard to have some of those conversations. But, what it comes down to is getting them to understand that, you don't have to treat people like that.
That's right.
You can be better. You can rise above all of that. And
you can be heard.
And having the ability to do that, definitely adds to the probability that you're going to be successful, because, a lot of people underestimate how important it is for people to actually, like you as a person. Their willingness to go the extra mile to make sure that you're okay, to support you. When you display behavior or do things or, act a certain way unwarranted, it makes it kind of hard for people to have that. And I'm not talking about those kids that experience things and we have to come in and we have to deal with those.
Right.
I'm talking about people who have had the opportunity to make decisions in their life.
Absolutely.
And they're choosing to be that person. Our goal is, or our job is, to make sure that when you have a kid who's displaying some of those things, going through things that make them sour that way, do everything that you can to try to show them that there are other ways to get some of the things they need, to be a little bit different, to be a little bit better. But when we have adults that are treating them that way and doing those things to them, it's real hard to explain to them how that's not the way to go.
Exactly.
Because they're the ones that they see get into a car every day. They're the ones who come in nice warm coats in the morning. They're the ones who have nice shoes on.
And order lunch and breakfast or whatever.
Whatever they want.
Yep.
And so if that is what you see, because unfortunately, if our kids aren't in households, where the parents have, a certain type of job, or they come from a certain type of family, they're not seeing, what it means to be an engineer. They're not seeing what it means to be a doctor. They're not seeing, what it means to be a dentist. There's a lot of things that our students are not exposed to. And so one profession that they are exposed to is a teacher, education. And so without us providing a real model for how they can be successful, you have to have a college degree to be a teacher. You can't be a teacher without
certain credentials,
without education.
Yep.
And so, making sure that they understand that this path comes with the responsibility of treating people a certain kind of way and doing certain things for people. And those people are the students in front of them. And, a lot of people just take it for granted. They don't respect the profession. And I think in a lot of ways, that's what's wrong with, where the profession is going. People consider it just a stop along the way and not a career anymore. And that's a whole nother topic for another day. But all of those things matter when you're talking about what a kid sees, what they come into every day, and what they leave with. And so.
But everything you said, like, you made a really good point, because perseverance is not just showing up, but it's also how you show up, right? It's also self-reflection. It's also saying to myself, you know what, today wasn't a real good day. It's some work that I need to do on myself to be better, because you have and when I speak of these things, I'm talking about the adults, because as adults and as educators, student behavior is communication. So we are supposed to be the guide and identifying where there are challenges, where there are gaps, and providing those resources and getting them the help and the supports that they need. But when we're adults, perseverance doesn't just look like I came to work every day, I was on time, I didn't call out. Perseverance looks like how you came to work, how you showed up, how you treated your colleagues, how you treated your students.
That's right.
And even if I don't treat them well, identifying that there's some stuff going on in me that doesn't have anything to do with anybody here.
That's right.
And I need to do some things to be better. That's perseverance as well. Because, even myself, I'm not a finished product. I never look at myself as that. And I don't want people to think that I am. And it's easy for people on the outside looking in to think everything's all polished and shiny. No, it's some hard days that I go through and a lot of self-reflection. And that's what people don't understand about being educators. As an educator, you have the mandate to be a reflective practitioner, which means every day you should ask yourself a question. What can I do today to make tomorrow better? Or what could I have done yesterday that I can bring into today so that it won't look the same? And we're not doing that. We're bringing ourselves, and we're given a stamp of approval by other toxic people by saying, I could deal with a toxic person if they're a good leader. You're co-signing poor behavior.
But typically when people say things like that, they're toxic people as well.
Absolutely.
They display behavior that shows that they don't care about their profession. They don't care about what they're doing. It's like a means to an end. And that's not the way to get a student on the path to be successful. That's not the way to get anybody on the path to be successful. So
no, because who wants to be talked down to? That's not motivation. And don't get me wrong. There are instances where situations have happened that is motivation. Like, I'll never forget when my teacher told me, nobody cares what you think. I'll never forget that. I'll never forget that, because every time I think about it, I figure out, it pushes me forward, because it's like, now I feel like, I wonder if you still think, if people don't care what I think, and that, but I didn't hold on to that so much so that it was the foundation for where I am today, because I don't give that kind of behavior, that kind of credit in my life. But I just say that to say there are instances where it can be used as a motivating factor. But when that's your everyday, when you sit under the voice of somebody like that for 10 months out the year, that stuff starts to stick on you. That stuff starts to become a part of you. You start to believe that those become seeds. And then those seeds start to grow. And so now I'm not only do I believe that I am not worthy of being treated with respect, I'm now going to go disrespect other people, because I got to make them feel how I feel, because I believe that that's the way you treat people.
And what happens when you don't have that person for 1 year, but you have another person the following year and somebody else the year after that? You become a really sour person.
You do.
And it's like, that's not even to take into account what you go through at home or on your way. That's a lot to have to bear the burden of as a young person. So.
But it's the same thing how, our relationships with our parents, whether they're good or bad, right? Like we internalize those things because those are the closest connections we have. And I think as educators, we don't realize how close of a connection we have, how impactful we are, how much of a sponge our students are, no matter what age. They look at us and think that we're in this seat and what we're doing is the way it's supposed to be done. And so when you have that teacher, or those students who, like I said, behavior is communication. So I had a student who a lot of times I could tell whether they had a good relationship with their mom or not. And a lot of it showed up with how they showed up on certain days. Like a lot of my female students, if they came in some mornings real emotional, more often than not, they had some type of tiff with their parent. And I've seen it in high school and I've seen it in middle school. And their parents, talk to them nasty, call them out their names and that kind of thing. So when you have a child like that, when they meet somebody that reminds them of their parent, what do they do? What do they normally do?
They respond that way.
They respond that way. They treat them like that, because I can't treat my parent like this. But so I'm going to give you everything that I can. And maybe it's not even somebody that reminds you of them. Maybe it's just that female authority figure. Now I don't respect female authority figures because the one in my life has treated me so nasty that that's out the window. And there has to be a lot of, deconstruction mentally for us to get to the root of the problem so that person can heal. But before that happens, I'm treating all females because I feel some type of way. It's the same thing when you have a toxic teacher. Now I'm looking at all teachers like that. And maybe it's a female teacher or just females. Maybe it's not, but maybe it's just all teachers. Now I don't respect any of you all.
And I think a lot of times educators don't really consider how much time they spend with the students. When you look at the amount of engaged time that we spend with students, it is actually more time than parents get to spend engaged with their child.
Especially at the elementary school level.
Especially at the elementary school level, when they're in a classroom with the same teacher most days.
Most of the day. Yeah.
For all but maybe 1 or 2 periods, all except for lunch and
specials
one
or
special.
whatever.
The rest of the day, they're in the classroom. You're talking about 6 hours. 6 hours, 5.5, 6 hours that they're with the same person. And so when you think about when the school day is over, you're talking about the school day ends at 3 o'clock. They get home. They're home at 3:30, 4:30, 5:30, 6:30. Normally around 7:30, you're wrapping it up, and on your way to bed. So you're talking about they have 3 or 4 hours with their parents, and a lot of times that's not engaged time. They're watching TV. They're on a tablet or on a phone. There's a lot of other things going on. So.
Parents cooking and not engaging. There's just a lot of different dynamics where that it's not focus time. But the focus time exists with that teacher.
In school.
That teacher, yeah.
That's the expectation.
Right. And I can remember, good teachers that I've had that, I would mimic, because I spent so much time with them, and I'm glad that they were positive influences. But I remember wanting to be like them. And I can't imagine if I had somebody that was not a good influence. Like, would I have still owned a part of whatever they were putting out? What I mean?
Would you still be like that?
Right. Would I still be like them? And, and when I think about, I'm just glad that they were positive people. And the things that I remember of them were good things, because it could go either way. And I'm talking about, the memories that I'm talking about are like 5th grade. And so when I remember having a 1st grade teacher, and she was not a good person. Like, she was very nasty. And I felt like she treated the boys better than she treated the girls. And I'm just glad that I didn't hang on to those, hold on to that. And it's sad because, like, she had no idea what my home life was like, and it wasn't great. So now I'm living in a toxic environment at home, and I'm coming here, and you're just as toxic as what I have to deal with at home.
And you can't say that there's no impact, because I can tell you, and this is me as an adult, this is me even as a leader. I've had people like Mr. Jamal influence how I lead. I've taken things that I've seen her do, and things that she's instilled in me to be successful. Mr. Mason, just his calm, cold demeanor all the time. Being able to take that and be successful with it. Miss Kerwin, with when it's about the kids, being ferocious about making sure that they get the things they're supposed to get. As adults, we absorb those things, and we take those things, and we use those things to be better and do better, because we had those experiences, or we got those gems from people. So if you don't think that a student, a kid, and they talk about how much more they absorb, and how much, how much more important it is for them to, get positivity and good things, because they're taking it all in. If you don't think that you have an impact on them, then you're sadly mistaken. And, the whole reason that we're there in front of them is to make sure that they're learning. And so learning is not just what's in that math or science or social studies or English book. It's about how we treat them to be in the world. How we teach them to treat people by how we treat them. Absolutely. By how we expect them to treat each other. All of those things are things that, we're looking to instill in them, to make sure that when they leave us, they have what they need to be able to persevere.
And I also believe that you can't instill those things in them if you don't know them. If you don't know them, like, you have to have a relationship with them, because just like in a household with a multi-sibling household, everybody needs something different. Everybody needs something different. To this day, my mom engages with each of us differently. Everybody needs something different. And if you don't recognize or get to know them, you'll never really know what they need, and they'll never get the fullness of the impact that you're supposed to be giving them, that you're responsible for. It's not just about the math, the science, the English, and the social studies. It's about teaching them how to communicate. Because if I can be the smartest person in the room, but if I don't know how to articulate properly in a way that's not offensive, in a way that doesn't say that I need to go back and get my social skills together because I got the social studies, but I didn't get the social skills. That's a problem. Yeah. That's a problem. And what I learned about students, and when I was in the classroom and I was doing JAG, one of the first lessons we did was communication. Because one thing I learned about students is that when they communicate in a way that's rough, raw, and brazen, that's what they're used to. A lot of times it's because they're not used to getting their needs met being nice. So, or the dialogue at home is full of tension. And so they bring that with them. They're not blank canvases. They come to you with what they have at home, with what they've learned at home. And they bring that, and they think it's appropriate because nobody has told them that it's not.
Mm-hmm.
That it's not. Just like I had teachers that would be like, they could say good morning. Did you say good morning to them?
Mm-hmm.
Because they may live in a household where they don't do that.
You're literally saying that, and you didn't say it to them first.
Right. And you didn't say it.
If you expect it, then just display.
And some of y'all don't say it to each other.
Mm-hmm.
If we're being honest.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot of people I have to, good morning.
Good morning.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but how can you judge them? But you're the example.
Mm-hmm.
So you want them to be the example.
Mm-hmm.
So then you just sit in their desk and let them sit at yours and let them run your classroom.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because for you to complain about it but not correct it means you're part of the problem.
Absolutely.
That means you're part of the problem.
I think one thing that I just reflect on this on a regular basis, and I think about how my mother used to talk to me, how she used to treat me, how she used to make me feel, right? And she had a way of making you feel like you were the most important person in the world. You were the most special person in the world. And almost to the extent that low key, I felt like I felt like I was her favorite, right? I have 9 other brothers and sisters. I felt like I was her favorite, right? And then I would hear my siblings talk, and everybody had the same type of feeling, right? I'm like, wow, that is amazing. And then she passed away. And at her service, I heard her friends talk. And I was like, wow, this is how she made everybody that she engaged feel. That's special.
That is.
That's special. And when we display ourselves that way, when we give of ourselves that way, and our students get that kind of person in front of them every single day, they have no choice but to be better.
Absolutely.
No choice but to be better. I don't care how rough your situation is. When you run into that, when you engage that, you might push back, you might challenge a little bit, but when somebody constantly gives positivity that way, constantly makes you feel special, constantly makes you feel like the most important person sitting in that classroom, and does it for every single kid in that class, there's no way that they don't get what they need from you. Exactly. And they're not going to give everything that they possibly can.
Absolutely.
And, for me, that's what it's about.
I've had students who started out rough, mm-hmm. like real rough, pop off quick, go off. Mm-hmm. And I remember one day I might have been being observed or something was happening. Mm-hmm. And I said something to this student, mm-hmm. and she got up and walked out. Mm-hmm. And so in the post-op, it was addressed like, well, the student got up and walked out. I said, because you know why? I said, she could have cussed me out. Mm-hmm. I said, in the beginning of the year, she may have, mm-hmm. but that was progress. I said something to her. She wasn't in a good space. Mm-hmm. Instead of directing her aggression to me, like she might do to another teacher or the next person she encountered, mm-hmm. or might have done to me if she didn't, before she knew me, mm-hmm. or before I poured into her, mm-hmm. that's progress. That's her growth. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to give her space to grow. Mm-hmm. And that's what it's about. Mm-hmm. And to somebody else, they might not understand that, but I'm forever going to give that student credit for that. Mm-hmm. And later on, I did tell her, mm-hmm. like, I appreciate that. Mm-hmm. And we both knew. But again, when you know your students, mm-hmm. when you know them,
you know what they need.
You know what they need.
You know what makes them feel valued. You know what makes them feel important. And in that moment, her being able to get up and walk out
without repercussions, without being followed, mm-hmm. without being hollered behind, mm-hmm. and going and getting herself what she needed, which might have been water, mm-hmm. which might have been just a bathroom break or 5 minutes, mm-hmm. and she did come back. Mm-hmm. But we have to be able to know our students, mm-hmm. to understand what they need to persevere, mm-hmm. because that was perseverance for her. Mm-hmm. Because if I kept on pressing, she may have checked out for the rest of the day. Mm-hmm. And that's how I do Gio. Like, I think about him, especially getting him ready in the morning. Mm-hmm. And I had to work on this because, transitioning into parenthood and going from all these years of not being a parent, mm-hmm. and getting ready for work and being able to get there early and get my day ready and not having to talk to nobody until, getting there early enough to have that me time. Mm-hmm. It was different as a mother, I had to slow down. I had to slow down. And a lot of that, it made me anxious. It made me anxious. I'm gonna be late. And initially a lot of my emotions I was putting on him. And I had to check myself really fast because I had to tell myself this: you're getting ready to ruin your child's day to go run and be a savior to somebody else's. And that's not okay. That's not okay. And I'm not going to say a savior, but a champion. I had to deal with him first because not only is it the right thing to do as a parent, but I'm setting him up for everything he's going to encounter for the day. And I'm sending him to other people like that.
You set the stage.
Yeah. So the same way the young lady gets cussed out by her mom and called out her name and comes to school crying and angry and cursing people out. I'm not doing that to my son, but just that anxiety and that, that frustration and in the not so gentle tone I'm talking to him and while we're getting ready, that's going to put those same or similar feelings onto him and he's going to project them onto somebody else. Now I'm getting a phone call, and so not only knowing your kids, but knowing yourself, knowing that there are times that even as a teacher, you have to emotionally regulate yourself because first of all, we're teaching students to do that. How am I going to teach my students to regulate emotionally when I'm not even doing it, when I'm all over the place, but I'm on stage when I'm in front of them. So I'm okay. That never sat right with me. That's hypocrisy. And it starts at home. Family is your first ministry. And what I practice here, I'm taking that out into the world. The same way what our kids practice here, I want them to take out into the world. And I'm not going to send them out there with nothing bad because it's a representation of our house. It's a representation of who we are.
And that's always how I've been, but it was always how I was treated. I don't recollect. And I'm sure there were days I had bad days. We wake up on the wrong side of the bed from time to time, but most days I remember, just positive feelings going through my morning, even in the rush, because there was so many of us, even in the rush of getting out the house, I knew what the routine was. I knew that when we got into the car, it was going to calm. My mom was going to say, our prayers, we were going to all say our prayers and, everything was going to be okay. And, she led us into the day in a positive way. And I felt like I was always able to give that back. And I try to do the same thing for my kids now, trying as much as I can, kind of giving them that calm, that peace before they go into the day. And you've seen, I've had my moments and it's like, but my moments are so far and few between that when they think about how I interact with them or how I treat them, none of us get stuck on my moments because they know it was just a moment.
They're fast and fleeting.
It's so rare. And so it's not to say a teacher can't have a bad day. It's not to say that things aren't going to, sometimes go awry and you're not going to have that magical day or that magical lesson. But most days, understanding that, we impact drastically the lives of these students, there has to be a clear effort to make sure that we're setting them up to be in a position to be able to persevere.
Absolutely. And, I'm trying to hold back my emotion, but, I don't remember mornings as a kid. I remember nights because the nights were arguments and the nights where a lot of, traumatic things were taking place. And so I don't really remember mornings, but I do remember, my third grade teacher. And I remember her kind of having an awareness of what was going on and her being kind to me, even though I knew I gave her hell. I knew. And she would call my mom and say, Ebony didn't have a good day. And, and a lot of times it was because of something that happened at home, but she didn't give up. She didn't give up on me. And while she knew what I was battling, she was a champion for me. She had a heart for me. And she didn't know exactly what was going on, but she showed up for me when I showed up.
Mm-hmm.
And when I didn't show up or when I didn't do well, she didn't make me feel like I was broken,
Mm-hmm.
that I was ruined, that I couldn't make it right or do better.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's, as educators, we have to do that. I always say, we don't have emotional hangovers here.
Mm-hmm.
Yesterday was yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And we have to, that's how we teach students how to
Mm-hmm.
persevere.
Mm-hmm.
That's how we teach them, by not holding things against them.
That's right. You gotta have a short memory.
You have to.
Mm-hmm.
You have to, because when you take it personal, your work should be personal,
Mm-hmm.
but nothing that they do, you should take personal,
Mm-hmm.
especially in terms of behaviors,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not about you. It's about what they're trying to communicate. And somebody said to me a long time ago, stop asking students what's wrong with them. And they weren't saying this to me. They were just saying it in general.
Mm-hmm.
Ask them what happened to them.
Mm-hmm.
What happened to you today?
Mm-hmm.
You know, that you came here like that.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you say what's wrong with somebody, you're automatically saying that they're defective,
Mm-hmm.
saying that I'm broken, saying that I should be tossed away. And that's not the case.
Mm-hmm.
Many of them are looking for someone to see them, to really see them
Mm-hmm.
for who they are and everything that they can become.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we teach perseverance. That's how. Give them the tools and then gradually release so that they can do the work. So,
You're just gonna drop the mic on me, huh?
that's all I have.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I guess that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you for watching,
Mm-hmm.
and stay tuned for more. Come see us again. TNT
TNT out.
Matter of Fact.